Hurt my knee yesterday. Andrea had to mow the lawn for me.
What did you do?
I was just climbing stairs, dude.
You're just
That's all
falling
I was
apart.
doing.
You're falling apart
Fucking
faster
tell me
than I
about it.
am. And I
Fucking
have
tell me
cancer
about
in
it.
my arm, so...
You used to have cancer in your
Well,
arm.
having cancer is kind of like being an alcoholic, dude. You kind of always are one. It's just whether or not you're, participating.
Well, I don't think you're a
So,
doctor, so that's your opinion.
at least I'm mixing it, okay? You're just...
Mixers are for quitters. There's a t-shirt.
We had a whole 2 views on the YouTubes from our first episode.
Yeah, we generally get a
Yeah.
handful of views for everything we upload.
All right. Somebody's out there wants to know what we're doing, or
It's probably just Morgan, but
you watched it twice. You got
Yeah.
distracted the first time.
I like this background you're working with here.
Yeah, I stole some stuff from some Russian gaming website. So let's see, what happens with that. Welcome everyone to episode 2 of Level 1 GM.
Are we recording?
Absolutely. What do you think? Do I look like I wouldn't? Well, no, that's a good question. That's a perfectly legitimate question. We are, in fact, recording. This is the show where I learn to be not sucky at GMing.
You don't suck at GMing.
And you all, the YouTubes get to, and the Twitches get to ride along with me in this great educational experiment. Because this guy beside me, Mike, he does not circ as a GM. So
I'm medium.
It's nice. It's nice to that you are feeling humble. But dude, you got a skill set. Okay, all right.
I think I've just been doing it long enough. I'm aware where my deficiencies are, and
you
work on them.
You avoid them because I'm not good at that part, so I'm not going to do that part of GMing.
Well, and then I'm working on them.
Yeah, of course.
It's a process. This feels like playing the piano.
Yeah.
For GMing for me, you know what I mean? Like storytelling.
Part of that is
never perfect.
Yeah. Part of that is confidence, though, right? Is the confidence of when you do something that's not so great, you can just work it in, so that it feels like it was supposed to happen in the first place.
All of my voices for my NPCs, which brings us to our topic.
It does indeed. So here's if you're following along live on Twitch. You will know that we dropped episode 2 of Deadlands Blood Moon, in which I, as GM, did stuff, and now I'm going to talk about what I think I did well and what I didn't, maybe not have done so well.
Only done 2 episodes of that?
Well, for the purposes of this podcast, yes, we are 2 episodes in.
Okay.
So, our characters, they got off the train and moved into Santa Fe, and of course it was time for me to introduce some NPCs, right? Characters that I get to use as storytelling devices to move the plot along and help you guys make cool choices.
And I think specifically to define what we're talking about here, he's not talking about throwaway NPCs that are just random people we run into. He's talking about named, reoccurring characters that are necessary for world development and plot development.
Indeed.
Work as antagonists and protagonists and all of that.
Right.
Good.
People that you're going to continue to go back to, both as a GM and and as a player. Now,
well, you think that.
Yeah, you make a good point. Mike, you have created some really, really good NPCs. Okay.
Stop.
We look back on things. I mean, let's look at we look back at Shadowrun, right? We had Lieutenant Cross, a wonderful character that
I love Cross.
Right, Cross was great.
That dude's so broken.
Deep character. Actually had an arc through all of that gameplay. Good stuff. We had in the Borderlands campaign, we had the corporate manager, who I totally forgot his name, but Laura's character actually fell in love with him. I mean,
Well, for friendship kind of fell in love. I don't
yeah,
think there
but
was
still,
like
I
much.
mean, she was broken when he died.
Yeah.
Seeker in
Yeah.
Cyberpunk was so much so that you became a player in your own campaign. I
I
mean,
know,
that's
which was I've always said I shouldn't do, but with Seeker I felt like I could actually do
right, and
again.
we'll talk about that too. I think today, and then of course Krasden. It's just littered with great NPCs, but Nitma, of course, comes to mind. And if you haven't seen these, if you're not aware of what we're talking about, please go to YouTube, search Durnk Industries. It's all there. Watch the backstories. Wonderful
After the
stuff.
show.
Yeah, not right now.
After the show.
Yes. So here's my let's dig into this a little bit, Mike.
Yes.
First of all, how important are well developed NPCs to a good GM, and why are they important?
To a good GM, they're incredibly important. Here's something that I go back to something I previously said where I think I'm an okay GM. I think I'm a medium, middle of the road GM. If you're a truly great GM, I think you could layer in environmental clues and sort of get rid of the whole concept of NPCs. I think that's actually possible within one of these games. I'm just not capable. So, you fill the world with people. Your players aren't the only people. Everybody else is you. Which, before my for fun joke was when people asked me, how do you make good NPCs? I said, well, start with multiple personality disorder and work from there. But the reality is it's a lot simpler and kind of more complicated than that. People aren't that complicated. The average individual, as much as they like to think that they're a unique little snowflake, and a lot of you, I'm sure, out there do. God knows I do. This is the right and left brain arguing with each other constantly in my mind. You're such an artist. Shut up. You've said nothing original ever.
Truth.
You can really boil a lot of the NPCs personality-wise down to a few very strict personality archetypes, right? Are they type A? Are they type B? Are they excitable? Are they more reserved? Is this an extrovert or an introvert? By the way, excitable and reserved aren't the same things as extrovert and introvert. Are they young? Are they old? Are they smart? Are they dumb? And you can break it down in these things. And actually, if you're learning this and trying to learn it, I think it's nice to write that out for you. Make binary a list right next to each other of binary choices like that. Smart, dumb. You know what I mean? Sociable, not sociable. Just make two lists next to each other, and then when you get to an NPC, if you don't have this person planned out in your head, which you should plan out major NPCs in your head before you get here. If you don't have planned out in your head, you can really quickly just look at it and go, well, A, B, A, B, and then we're done. We have a character. Using them as a plot device is a different thing. These are NPCs you should probably think about ahead of time. Because they need to be in position that they would know what you want to convey to the players, whatever little piece of information, whatever resource or contact, they actually need to be in position to know these sort of things and be fleshed out in that manner. And B, they need to have at least enough of a backstory for when your NPCs start talking to them, and the whole purpose is that you've put this character here so that they can talk to them, that they can give reasonable responses quickly. Now, I've done a lot of improv in my time. I've pretty used to it. So I don't have to go as deep into certain things when I'm prepping them. But if you're not comfortable in that, just feel free to write a paragraph, put it in front of you. label it at the top what character this is,
Right.
and then as you're going, just reference it.
It's using the tools of a good actor, or at least a capable
Yes.
actor, we'll say, and using those tools in creating character. I mean, I think good players do that kind of instinctively when they're
Yes.
creating a single character for them, that they're going to play in a game. We always encourage everybody to come up with a backstory. And you've done it. Send me your backstory so I know your character. We write stuff down. I think as a GM we're doing that as well for these major NPCs. Not like you
Right.
said earlier, not the little guys, not the bartender,
Mm-hmm.
not those one-dimensional or two-dimensional characters that are that we probably will return to simply because we're going back to the same kind of places and stuff. But when we start talking about those major NPCs, the ones that are either we'll call them supporting protagonists, or
Mm-hmm.
part of the group of antagonists, whether they're the big bad guy or not.
Mm-hmm.
Having a good idea of what that character's arc is kind of important to be able to use them as tools. Yes, no?
Right. Yes, I would think so, and especially if they fall into necessary for whatever your particular story you're trying to tell is, whatever your campaign is, whatever your adventure. If they are somewhat necessary, even if your group goes full murder hobo and kills one of them off, there should be repercussions to that, right? There should be purpose for them not being there. There was purpose for them being there. There should be purpose for them not being there, and these people should reflect that in what they say, how they act. They don't have to be smart. They don't have to be sociable. They don't have to be well spoken in any way. But they're there for a purpose. And you, as the GM, it's your job to assign that purpose and then remember it.
Let's talk a little bit about the purpose. How do you use? I mean, what's the one, like maybe one or two really big ways you use NPCs when you're telling a story?
Um, I always go under the when I make these stories, I try to make everything believable a little bit. No matter, I know a lot of these there's fucking magic fireballs floating around and dragons and cybernetic limbs and shit like that. That's kind of irrelevant, right?
Right.
You want it to feel like you're talking to somebody, even if they have giant pointy ears and are blue. So in that, there is no person. Hopefully, there's no one person that knows everything. So, assign what they know, assign what they don't know.
That's good. That's
and
good.
work from there. It could be a lot. They could know a lot. Nitma's a good example. Like Nitma knows a lot. She's been alive a long time. She's been in a position of power for a long time. I'm talking about Nitma from Croston. She knows a lot, but she doesn't know everything. In fact, her not knowing everything has caused her to be gone for over a month of gameplays or something like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They ran into a situation in which she didn't know something, didn't know how to proceed. So because she doesn't like not knowing things, her plan of attack was I'm going to stay here and research it. And because of that, she's no longer a resource to the players.
Right.
It's it's define those rules for those people because they are people. They should feel like people when your players interact with them. Even the throwaway ones, they should feel like people.
And you said something once, very specific to Crosden, kind of early on, where this was like after a game. You had said something to the effect, all these characters, I mean, life is going on. Stuff is happening, whether you know it's happening or not. To these NPCs, to the world, all of that kind of stuff.
I online in certain D&D forums, I see GMs and players complain about the concept of the divination wizard. For those unaware, a divination wizard is a aspect wizards in 5e can take. And basically, at the start of a day, so after a long rest, you can, and you got to figure it out with your GM how you want to do it, but they can like basically meditate for a little bit and then get visions of stuff that could happen. The important word there is could. And it's not a clear signal of here's what's going to happen. It's this could happen dependent on what you do. And I don't see why I just still can't figure out why that's a bad thing, because the interactions with NPCs will dictate whether or not that will happen. Now, NPCs, this is a very broad topic. It's not just people with names, the Colonel for Blood Moon.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the bartender.
Mm-hmm.
The monsters they interact with are also NPCs.
They are.
They also dictate where the story could go or should go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Those monsters need motivation as well.
Right.
So
we keep going back, I think, to this idea that there's absolutely a difference between your old school kind of, first gen dungeon crawl, where you go, we've gotten together in a tavern. We're going to go to the dungeon caves, and we are going to get the treasure. Yay!
Which is fine, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just very one-dimensional.
Right. So, as a GM, can you use an NPC incorrectly?
Yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of ways to use NPCs incorrectly. I mean, as long as NPCs are interacting, you're kind of doing it right? But if your motivation as the GM ever usurps the motivation of the character you're playing, there needs to be reason behind that. And I know a lot of GMs that accidentally run into this problem. Where an NPC starts to word vomit.
Mm-hmm.
The GM has gotten so attached to an idea of the things that this NPC knows that they're just going to let it all out, no matter the scenario or what the players have done. There's also another way is if the NPC doesn't get that information out and then basically goes away, albeit circumstance or death. I've seen a lot of GMs struggle with that, not know where to go from there, and either force the NPC back into the game in some way, which feels unnatural. Resurrection. For no fucking reason whatsoever. Long dying diatribes, which I can't stand. Or they'll just be, I was just coming through the neighborhood. Were you? Was there any purpose for you to be here while we were out in this camp in the middle of nowhere?
Oh, fancy seeing you here. I was just taking a dump, and that's just, well then.
Exactly. You have to, as important as it is to want to get your story told, and I understand the frustration on when the players don't either don't want to or won't follow whatever path you have given them. Part of the fun, and I think, again, my opinion, but I believe this is a shared opinion amongst quite a few players. Part of the fun is the unknown of this group narrative that you're crafting. As the GM, you need to remember you're not the only storyteller there. Every single player are minor editors on your narrative. They are.
Yeah, absolutely true.
If they don't want to know the plot hook, if they choose not to go for it, that's their choice. And you either need to layer it back in later in an organic sense, or you need to figure out a way to have repercussions for them not to find that. Forcing NPCs to act outside of what would make sense for whatever that creature or being is inappropriately playing an NPC, in my mind. To get back to your question.
And yeah, I think, of course, of whenever we talk about these things, I think about, writing just a straight narrative, whether it be, writing a book or writing a script or something of that nature.
Book writing.
And
the perfect form of GMing.
Yeah, right. As you said, I think last time, the real problem.
Players are the worst part.
The real problem with role playing are the characters. Yeah.
We're getting back to every episode. I'm sure this will be revisit this as a GM every single episode.
But is it those NPCs, the good NPCs, the one that we want to create as game masters, the one that we want to help. Essentially, they're the guide, right? Sort of, if we're talking about like the sort of that classic, quest storytelling.
Yes.
They're basically guides along the way. Maybe there's one, maybe there's several.
Well, okay, kind of.
Okay.
They need to be a subtle guide.
Right.
The players need to feel like they are the guide. If you hand them an NPC that simply tells them what to do every single time they are approached by that NPC, it will feel like a crutch, and they will feel like they don't have choice.
Right. Yeah.
They shouldn't be guides. They should be breadcrumbs.
Now, that is, yes, exactly, I think, where we were headed with this conversation of NPCs. I think, and that is a conversation that we will absolutely have, probably next episode, is to talk about breadcrumbs. You had said earlier that a really great GM could do all of these things without NPCs. Could actually lead.
I think it's possible.
Lead characters to make choices based on clues of some other kind, as opposed to the NPC. What does that mean? Can you? I'm not quite sure exactly what I'm asking. So I'll edit this out for the YouTube version. How do you know when you've had a lot of experience. How do you know when you've started to cross that line? Is there a moment where with any character, where you've realized, with any NPC, where you've gone, oh, yeah, I've gone too far, I've given them too much information, or this character shouldn't have known that? Do you have any examples that you can give?
Actually, my biggest problem with NPCs is sort of the reverse of that. Sometimes I'm so afraid to use them to the extent of what they would know and what they're capable of that I end up not using them. But
that's a great contrast to this. Go ahead. Talk more about that.
A perfect example is this past weekend, A Distant Star. There was a bandit attack. They were attacked on a boat by another boat as they were sailing on a river. I set it up. They've been following them for a while. It's a boat chase. It takes a long time. They recognized them that they were being followed for quite some way, but the other ship was faster, and I couldn't do anything about that because the ship they were on was larger, and it was weighed down by a lot of goods, and there was livestock on it. It was just slower. So there was this mounting, we're going to have a confrontation here. Well, the ship captain, whose character's name is Julie Dubigny, or Lollipop, Hanover, whichever moniker she's using at any given time.
Nice.
She actually is the younger sister of two of the player characters, Morgan's character and Laura's character. But she was meant to fight it out a little bit. Well, the players started to kind of shit stomp the like. It was pretty evident pretty quickly that they were winning, and Julie's initiative order was very far down the track, right? Meaning, and so I thought about it. I'm like, well, in my head, she sees they're at no point going they're going to win this. It's evident immediately they're going to win this.
Right.
So she stayed at the helm. But the more I thought about it after the fact, I still think it would have been a strong narrative choice to see this character that was sibling to two of the players that they had not seen in a number of years, show her defend herself or do something powerful for the sake of it.
Right. One of those holy shit moments for...
Yes.
Yeah,
It could have shown growth and shown that this NPC is to be respected. I chose not to because I, in the moment, thought it would be better if she held off. That's generally where I lie on misplaying NPCs. I play them back a little too far.
Well, as you were talking there, it became clear to me what my real question is, and that would be: is it a legitimate use of an NPC to help player characters make better choices? Here's my example. Let's say they're just not your players just aren't picking up the clues that you've put down. Is it okay to take an NPC and point out something that your players are missing?
So they're at full stop, right?
Right.
That's the scenario. Your players have,
and perhaps
all of the hamsters have died.
Perhaps they've just made choices that point them in an incredibly useless direction. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios there, but yeah, let's.
Been there.
Yeah, I mean, we've made those choices. So, yeah.
Yes, I think it's important to step in at that point and point it back in the right direction. Now, this again needs to feel organic, and that's really where the trouble lies in it, right? Do you have a missive sent to the party or a message sent to the party from this king that they were supposed to be helping that wouldn't know where they're at right now? How do you explain away how they got the message there? Do you fire up another NPC, scribble them out of nowhere, and somehow this one knows the exact same stuff and points them back in the right direction? That's a really foot on the fly situation and necessary. It is a necessary skill because it happens enough when you're given enough choice in D&D, and even in the more linear modules I've played, there's just enough choice that there's always a situation in which there's one, I don't know what to do. Maybe just everyone's feeling, not as quick that night, or not as, or they've made decisions that pushed them in the weird direction.
Yeah.
It is required to step in at that point. And again, I think this is going to be might be the only rule for GMing in general. There's a lot of good ideas and guidelines, but nothing is incorrect. Like, it's a bad idea to force NPCs into your players' lives, to force them information or force them in a direction. But if they're getting zero forward movement, what choice do you have?
Right. So the short answer would be yes, it's perfectly acceptable. But
everything's perfectly acceptable.
Right, but be careful how you do it.
Yeah, just be very careful how you do it. Make sure it's...
Because you risk the railroading thing. You risk, okay. No.
You risk the players feeling like you're removing the illusion of choice, which, by the way, if you're doing it right, there is only an illusion of choice.
Right.
Because if they're the proper size, and we'll do this next week, I guess. But if you do proper sized breadcrumbs with just enough sugar and cinnamon on them, they'll gobble those right up and head in the right direction.
Indeed.
But you know, you can never take into account proper murder hoboing. So sometimes you're just in those scenarios.
So true. So yeah, next week, and actually I think it'll work perfectly inside of discussion of episode 3 of Deadlands, Blood Moon, which you can see live on Twitch every Thursday. Let's table discussion of breadcrumbs until then.
Yep.
But until next week, I am Chad and he is Mike. Do as he says, not as I do. And just remember, your table, your rules. Level 1 GM. We'll see you all later.
Get rid of counterspell, by the way. Don't use counterspell.
What's wrong with counterspell?
Has nothing to do with anything. Just don't use it in your campaign.
It's just counterspell. You spelled. No, I countered your spell.
Don't do it as a GM. Don't do it as a player. It's bad.
It's just not cool. It just makes... That's not
all right,
fun.
I'm good.
That's not fun.
I was thinking about that earlier today.
All right. See y'all later. Thanks for joining us. Bye.